Okay, so the format of today's webinar is kind of like a Q&A session between Sarah and I. And if you have any questions from the audience, feel free to ask them as well, and I can direct them to Sarah. So the first question is, could you explain how mindfulness specifically helps individual with Parkinson to manage both the physical and emotional challenges that they face?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think before I answer that question, the important thing to cover is what is mindfulness? I think the easiest way to define it is mindfulness is a non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. I like to think about mindfulness as sort of a practice. It brings our attention to the current, what's happening right now, here and now, and we want to experience that without judgment and reaction. Mindfulness has two components, and I think both of these components can be really helpful for individuals with Parkinson's disease. And the two components are awareness and acceptance. So we want to be aware of what's happening, and then we want to be able to accept that. Um, I heard this definition used one time, and I don't know who used it, but I loved it, so I will share it with you. They talked about mindfulness as a practice that increases our capacity to be aware of our internal experiences. I really love the word capacity because when we're dealing with chronic conditions, I think that capacity gets smaller and smaller. Right? If we're in a lot of pain, we might want to numb our internal experiences so that we can manage that pain. And so I love mindfulness because it increases that capacity. It allows us to zoom out a little bit, to be able to observe ourselves, our internal experiences, thoughts, feelings, even our sensations, and be able to tolerate it. So now that I've defined it, how does it help? We know from so many research studies that just mindfulness in general is helpful for stress relief, it improves emotional regulation, helpful for pain management, improves quality of sleep, reduces symptoms of depression, improves your memory, your focus, even your mental processing speed. It allows you to adapt to stressful situations, and it even reduces rumination. So as I've gone through this list, you can probably see how it might be really helpful for patients with Parkinson's disease, right? But I'll expand on that a little bit more too, in that when we're dealing with a chronic condition, one of the most challenging thing is the unpredictability, right? It's the anxiety about the uncertainty of the future. What new symptoms am I going to develop? When am I going to develop it? What is my future going to look like? And so the amazing thing about mindfulness is that it allows us to focus on the present instead of getting lost in the future, because we don't really have control in the future. What ifs can't really do anything about it. You can prepare and plan as much as you want, but at some point, if you're preparing and planning for the future, you forget about the here and now. I kind of like to sometimes use a metaphor of driving. If you're driving, it's good to know where you're going, which is the future, right? It's also good to know what the cars behind you are doing, which is the past. But the most important thing is to know where your car currently is. Because if you don't know where your car is, and you're thinking about going to, I don't know, Grouse Mountain, you might drive into oncoming traffic, right? So we got to be aware of the present because the present is where we have control. Um, I also think when it comes to specifically chronic conditions like Parkinson's disease, mindfulness also helps build our tolerance for discomfort, right? So when we have those involuntary movements, there's going to be a lot of frustrations. There's going to be a lot of discomfort with that, a lot of annoyance and anger, right? So what mindfulness does, it allows us to tolerate those because if we have to sit in the present moment, we have to tolerate the sensations, the feelings, the thoughts that we're having. We have to accept them. So that can be really helpful. Um, and I know that there's a lot of research out there with mindfulness for Parkinson patients that actually shows that higher stress in Parkinson's disease is related to worsening both motor and non motor symptoms. So we want to make sure we're reducing that stress. We want to make sure we're slowing down. And this is something, a benefit that mindfulness can give you. Now, I want to show a little video on YouTube. It's a very short one that I think is going to be really helpful in sort of capturing this. So while I talk and try to share my screen at the same time. Let's see, there we go. All right. Are we able to see that? Kelly's nodding. Perfect. So this is some researchers that were looking at sort of mindfulness with Parkinson patients, and they were trying to see what does a single session of mindfulness and relaxation does for motor function. So at the beginning of this video, you're going to see they haven't done any mindfulness practices, and this individual is sort of trying to move their hands, and they're having some struggles, and then you'll see what happens once I'm gonna play the video.
At the same time, I can't do it.
Okay.
It makes me tremor.
Okay.
I even try. But if I stop doing that, that's all.
So now we've done some breathing exercises and we have retrained the right hand to move mindfully, and Shaka's increased the speed just a little bit. Keep going. Very good. Good.
So I don't know what it was for everybody to be able to see that, but I think you can see how a single mindfulness relaxation exercise can have a huge impact. Now, I want to give a warning. This doesn't mean this is going to happen every single time you do a single session of mindfulness, right? But the ability to slow down is going to be helpful in managing a lot of the symptoms of Parkinson. And I think considering that it's a non-invasive way of doing it and it's a quick one that you can incorporate into your day-to-day activities, I personally think it's worth it to try to put that in. Yeah. Did I answer your question, Kelly?
Yes, you did. And I have a follow-up questions with regards to that. So you did mention some, practical mindfulness techniques. Could you walk us through a few simple mindfulness practices that people with PD or their caregivers can incorporate into their daily life?
Absolutely. So, if you remember my definition, mindfulness is about practice of bringing our attention to the present moment. And our mindfulness is not really about never having your mind wander. We just want to be able to bring it back to the present moment. So this is why we always sort of need an anchor that can ground us in the current moment. Sort of like how a ship, how an anchor holds a ship steady. So you can actually pick any anchor, but one of the most common ones is the breath. So one of the simplest mindfulness exercises is actually a 5-minute breathing mindfulness. And there is no trick to it, as the name suggests, it's very simple. You focus, you find a space, you can lie down, you can sit, however you're comfortable, and you just sort of focus on your breath, noticing what it feels like to breathe, right? What it feels like to inhale and exhale. And you focus your attention on that breath. And of course, your mind is going to wander. That's okay. As soon as it does, sort of bring that attention back to the breath. And you continue to do this for around 5 minutes. This is a really easy one to get started and to just get used to how to use breath as an anchor, as something that keeps you in the present moment. The other one that I really also love is Leaves on a Stream. And I think this particular one can be a really helpful one on days where we have all of those thoughts and we feel like we're getting entangled in them and like we're worrying and there's distractions and there's all of these to-do items that you have to do and your mind feels a little cluttered. Leaves on a stream can be really helpful on those days. Basically, what you do is you imagine a body of water or stream, and you imagine that there are leaves floating on the stream. And as soon as you have a thought, a physical sensation, any internal experiences, you take that and put it on a leaf and watch it float away. So you can see, if I have an anxiety-inducing thought and I put it on a leaf and have to watch it float away, you can see how that might help me build tolerance to having an anxiety-inducing thought and not feeling like I need to do anything about it, right? Like, a simple example is with students, right? If they have an anxiety thought of, I'm going to fail my exam tomorrow, well, if you have that thought, your brain is going to be like, oh my God, what if I fail? And then what am I going to do? And then I'm going to fail this course. And then I'm going to fail this other thing and that thing. Your brain is going into problem solving, right? But an exercise like leaves on a stream kind of forces you to sort of tolerate and sit with that without having to do anything. The other one I recommend is mindful activity. Now, this is a simple one to incorporate into your day-to-day life. And remember how I talked about the breath being an anchor, but literally anything can be an anchor. Cutting vegetables can be an anchor, right? So this is where mindful activity becomes really helpful in that you get to choose the activity as your anchor. That's the thing you're going to focus all of your attention on. So everyone who knows me knows I love coffee. I've got my Amber coffee mug with me all the time. So for me, an easy way to do this is if I'm drinking coffee in the morning, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to smell the coffee. I'm going to think about what notes am I smelling, right? As I take a sip, what's that texture like on my tongue? What are the flavors that I'm tasting? Can I taste the sugar or the milk? What's the sensation like as I swallow? Can I feel the warmth as it goes down into my chest? And that can take less than 5 minutes. Probably could do it in a minute, right? But it helps you slow down. And it's the same thing you can do mindful activity when you're going on a walk. So if you see a tree on your path, think about really focusing all of your attention on that tree. Because drinking coffee, seeing a tree on the path that you're walking, even listening to music, we do a lot of this stuff on autopilot, not really paying attention, right? So these are great anchors that can slow you down. Now, my most favorite one is the body scan. I love this one so much. And I actually, because I know I'm talking about all of this, but I wanted all of us to actually start to maybe a little bit experience some of this together. So I'm actually going to guide all of you through a body scan mindfulness. And if you're comfortable with it, you can follow along. If not, you can just hear me do the guidance and just sit with that. But basically, a body scan, we're going to start from the bottom of your feet, move all the way to the top of your head, noticing the sensations in each area. And this really helps us become aware of our body and how we're feeling physically. The reason why I love it is because you can actually do a compassionate body scan, which is really helpful because I don't know about all of you, but as somebody who is dealing with chronic pain, if I'm thinking about my body, the part that's the loudest is the part that's hurting. That's the part that's the loudest all the time. And it's exhausting hearing that signal of pain constantly. But there are parts of my body that are not in pain, that I don't realize because my attention is constantly focused on the part that's hurting. That can lead to developing feelings of frustration and anger at my body for not doing what I want it to do. So body scans really helpful in being able to recognize, okay, what are parts of our body that are being awesome, that are doing their job, that are being really helpful. Okay, let's do the body scan together. Yeah, I want y'all to get as comfortable as possible. And then when you're ready, just begin by taking a deep breath in. If possible, allow your eyelids to slowly close if that's comfortable. If not, keep them open with a soft gaze. Begin, just focus your attention on your breath. Seeing if you can notice what it feels like to breathe in. Noticing as the air moves into your body, as you inhale, as the breath moves out, as you exhale. And if your mind wanders, that's okay. As soon as you notice it wander, just bring your attention back to your breath. On your next inhale, I want you to imagine as if the air is moving all the way down into your chest and then all the way down to the bottom of your feet. As we start this body scan, I'm gonna start with our feet. I want you to take a moment to notice your feet. What are they like? Seeing if you can notice any sensations. If you don't notice any sensations, that's okay. Just appreciating your feet for existing and being there. And if you can take a deep breath in, allow the breath to move all the way to your feet. And seeing if you can breathe out from your feet. I want you to slowly move your attention up your leg, one part at a time. Noticing whatever body sensations are present. Appreciating if a part feels fine. And breathing into the part if there's any discomfort. moving slowly to your ankle, moving up into your knees, continuing to move up into your thighs, as you engage in this exercise, your mind is going to wander. That is okay. As soon as you notice it wandering, just bring your attention back to the sensation, the particular part of your body that you last remember. Seeing if you can take a deep breath in and imagine the breath moving into all of your muscles in both of your legs, nourishing those muscles, warming them up, and then breathing out from both of your legs. And we're going to move up to your stomach and abdomen, seeing if you can take a deep breath in, noticing as your stomach rises as you breathe in and sinks as you exhale. Continuing to move up into your chest and shoulders, noticing what those areas feel like today. If you can take a deep breath in, watching the air move into those muscles, and then breathing out. You're gently moving into your arms, from your shoulders to your elbow, to your wrist, to your fingers. Noticing any sensations, not judging any of those sensations. If you notice any tremors, that's okay. Just scanning your body, your arms for sensations, checking in with each area to see how they're feeling today. Taking a deep breath in and watching it Move all the way down your arms into your fingertips, and then breathing out from your fingertips and watching it move all the way back out. And now finally, taking a deep breath in, noticing the sensations in your face, at the top of your head, your neck, even checking in with your ears. And we're taking one final deep breath in, watching it move throughout all of your body. And then breathing out. And then you can take a second before you come back and open your eyes and come back to the room. Okay, so congrats. You've now done a very quick body scan. I want you to check in with yourself and see what that was like. Sometimes there's going to be feelings of relaxation, and sometimes there isn't. And both of those are okay. But I hope this kind of gave you a taste of what that's like.
Thank you, Sarah, for giving us a taster of the mindfulness exercises there. I personally felt very relaxed when following through that exercise, and yeah, I'm sure everyone did as well. Yeah, so my next question is, many people with Parkinson oftentimes experience anxiety and depression. So based on your expertise, like what role does mindfulness play in addressing these emotional struggles and how it can complement the traditional treatments like therapy or medication?
Yeah. So mindfulness is really great in combination with therapy, in combination with medication. I regularly use it in my sessions to help my clients regulate their emotions as well as become aware of what's going on internally. I think when we think about anxiety, the way I often look at it, it's really related to loss of control, and our brain wants to find ways to regain that control. So we ruminate, we overplan, we overanalyze. And in the same way, I think about depression. I think about feelings of defeat, feelings of hopelessness. And that can often come because we're trying to control things that feel like they're out of our control. So we feel really defeated. Um, so the way mindfulness helps with the management of anxiety and depression is one, it really helps us develop self-compassion, because if we're aware of our internal experiences, we're going to be kinder to ourselves, right? If we're aware of how much pain we're physically in, we are going to be kinder if we're struggling throughout the day. Two, it really allows us to focus on what's in our control and let go of the things that are not in our control. And the third thing that it does, it really develops our tolerance for uncertainty, because life is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen at any moment. But what we do know, what we can find comfort in, is that no matter whatever happens, we'll be able to deal with it. And mindfulness can help us sort of develop that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. And you mentioned that ways how it can help with depression and anxiety. I do know that there are a lot of recently, especially, there are a lot of resources on mindfulness. Are there any common challenges or misconceptions for people with Parkinson that might face when trying to practice the mindfulness exercises? And how would you suggest people to overcome these challenges?
Absolutely. So the first one that I will hear, and this I will hear from everybody, is I can't focus, right? So if I'm doing the 5 minute breathing mindfulness with them, I can't focus on that. My mind is running, everywhere. So I can't do that. Now, in order to talk about that, I actually want to share a slide of, there we go. Yes, that was research done that actually showed mind wandering when you're aware of it versus mind wandering when you're not aware of it. And they did an fMRI and looked at, the activation in the brain. So the top one, and I know this is a little small, so I hope everybody can see, but I think it's pretty clear that when you're mind wandering and you're not aware that you're engaging in mind wandering, there are a lot more being activated compared to when you're mind wandering, but you're also aware of it. Now, I'm not a neurology expert or any of that, but I think this captures the fact that there is a difference between mind wandering and not recognizing where your mind is going, having a lot of thoughts in your head and not knowing what the content of those thoughts are, versus having a lot of thoughts in your head and knowing the content of it. So if you can't focus, that's okay. You can still engage in mindfulness. It's just about being aware of what's going on in your head. What are the things that are distracting you? What are the things that are taking away your attention? That's one of the misconceptions that I wanted to break. The other one is I have to empty my mind. I think a lot of people think about mindfulness and meditation as emptying their mind. And if they can't do that, then they've done it wrong. I do not want you to empty your mind. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing to do. If your mind's not empty, that's awesome. That means you're alive. That means your brain is functioning. You're able to think about things. We just want you to be aware of what's going on in your mind. The third thing I hear often is, well, I did it and I'm still stressed out. Yes, you may still be stressed out. Sometimes a single mindfulness session can be really helpful at decreasing your stress, decreasing Parkinson's symptoms. Sometimes it might not. It's kind of very similar to exercise. We know how exercise is going to really help with cardiovascular functioning and lung capacity and all of these amazing things. A single session at the gym doesn't improve your lung functioning, right? Doesn't improve your cardiovascular functioning. It's about continuing to do it regularly. It's about helping you be able to manage stress a little bit better than you would have if you had not engaged in a mindfulness. The last challenge that I think about hearing very often is I can't sit still. And because I work with a lot of clients that also have ADHD, this is a common one that we talk about. And I say, well, let's not then. Let's not sit still. You don't have to engage in the still mindfulness, right? The body scan or the 5 minute breathing one. You don't have to engage in those. We can engage the mindful activity as a way of practicing mindfulness. You can even do the body scan while walking so that you're even more aware of your physical movement and the sensations in the areas of your body. So those are the common ones I can think of.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And if anyone in the audience could think of any other common misconceptions, you can feel free to put it in the chat box, and I'm sure Sarah will be able to walk you through it as well. So my next question, we're going to diverge a little bit and, talk a bit about mindfulness for caregivers. So my question is, how can caregivers benefit from these mindfulness practices? Do you have any strategies that they can use to manage their emotional stress while they're supporting their loved one with Parkinson?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we know from research, mindfulness isn't just helpful for individuals with chronic conditions, it's actually helpful for everybody. Particularly with caregivers, one of the ways it can be really helpful is it can reduce burnout, right? Mindfulness allows you to slow down, reduce your stress, ground yourself, and also recognize where you're at and what your limits are. So you don't push past those limits. You know what you need to be able to take care of yourself, right? And you don't experience that emotional exhaustion. And the mindfulness practices that I've talked about, the 5-minute breathing, the body scan, the mindful activity, the leaves on a stream, these are exercises that caregivers can also engage in. In fact, they can engage, together. Let's all do it together at the same time. And it can be beneficial to both. But even something as simple as reflecting on your pace and how quickly you're going and slowing it down purposefully. So, counting to 5 before you do this next thing. Probably can afford to slow it down by a count to 5. But that's going to be really helpful. Even something like taking a deep breath in can be really helpful. This allows you to respond in a more controlled manner, right? You respond with more patience than respond with stress. And it also creates the zooming out that I was talking about, can create that emotional space. So you can look at things from a different perspective.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I agree that, mindfulness is really for everyone. And I just want to, I guess, go into the long-term benefits I have, because I understand like some of the mindfulness sessions, you go to it for a certain period of time. In your experience, what are some of the long-term emotional or psychological benefits that people with Parkinson can gain through consistent mindfulness practices?
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of research on this too, which is awesome. But one of the main aspects that long-term mindfulness can help is sort of with the acceptance of Parkinson's disease. And that's really going to be helpful sort of at the beginning of the journey to be able to accept where you are at right now. The other long-term benefits is improvement of quality of life. And this is really cool to see, right? Because we're not, by engaging in mindfulness, is not like we are, really doing much to the symptoms that you're dealing with. But it does improve your quality of life. It improves your ability to be able to deal with that discomfort, with that pain. It actually also improves cognitive functioning, which I think is really awesome, right? And we actually see this even with my clients who have ADHD, mindfulness can improve their executive functioning challenges, their ability to sustain attention, their ability to, even with the challenges of I missed the word, I forgot what that word is. Mindfulness really helps them be able to manage that, and it slows down that cognitive decline. We see that regular mindfulness practices increase development of self-compassion, whether not just when you're doing the mindfulness, like in general in your life, right? If you've been practicing it regularly, you're more able to, on a day-to-day basis, have that some self-compassion, access that self-compassion. And we also know that mindfulness really helps increase self-awareness. You get to know yourself better. You get to know what's going on in your body, right? You get to build that relationship with your body. You get to understand yourself better, understand your limits. So I think there's a lot of long-term benefits that you gain if you're consistently engaging in mindfulness.
Thank you, Sarah. I know in the beginning of the webinar and throughout the webinar, you did mention how mindfulness can have an impact on mobility and cognitive function. These are really common symptoms with people with Parkinson. So my question is, how can mindfulness exercises be adapted to suit the different stages of the disease?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, like the beginning of the journey, right? That acceptance piece becomes really important. So this is where mindfulness can be really helpful. And then maybe at the beginning of the journey, those more longer mindfulness sessions, or the ones that require a lot of sitting, might work, might be good. And as the throughout different stages of the disease, I would say giving yourself permission to adapt it by changing your position. You don't have to do mindfulness sitting down. You can lie down, you can walk, you can sit on a chair, right? Whatever position is more comfortable. You can also shorten mindfulness practices. A 5-minute breathing one, you can actually do it in 1 minute too. There's nothing wrong with that. So if that's all you're able to do for that day, that might be an important one. The other thing that I talk about with my clients a lot is about using guided mindfulness practices. Because guided practices, you're hearing somebody's guiding you through the practice. It's much easier when we're struggling with our memory to remember what the steps are. If we're struggling with mind wandering, guided meditations are really helpful because they bring our attention. They kind of force our attention to come back because somebody's, telling you what to do at the next step, and you realize, oh, I mind wandered. So guided mindfulness practices can be really helpful. In the same way, sensory mindfulness practices can also be helpful at later stages of the disease. So what I mean when I say sensory mindfulness practices is where we focus on particular senses. So focusing on a strong smell. I really love lavender. I really love peppermint. So if I want to engage in sensory mindfulness, then it would be sort of getting a gum that's like a very peppermint gum, and chewing on that, and now I've got the sense of taste that's feeling that, as well as the smell, right? And I can focus on that, and this is sort of gives that jolt to the system, and really helps keep our attention on the mindfulness practice.
Thank you, Sarah. And another question, it's kind of like a follow-up for that, is, a lot of people are already undergoing therapy or medical treatments for Parkinson. So how can they integrate the mindfulness practices into their existing care plans to enhance the overall well-being? Like, what is the right balance for that?
Yeah. So great thing about mindfulness is that it's not is non-invasive, right? You don't really need any much to be able to engage with it. You can choose how long you do it, so it can easily be added to your routine that you already have. So, one of the things that's really important with Parkinson's is physical therapy. And so being able to, you can incorporate mindfulness into that, right? When you're engaging in physical therapy, you can incorporate mindfulness by being aware of your body, being aware of the body movement. So now you've done your physical therapy and you've done sort of basically a body scan, a mindfulness practice, right? It can also be incorporated with mindful movement. So if you're going to do any physical therapy, while you're engaging in that, really practicing the mindful movements, right? Practicing slowing it down. See how on the YouTube video we saw, like, if you paid attention at the beginning, the movements were much faster, right? And then after the mindfulness practice, the movements were slower, but it was much easier to move from those slow movements to increase the speed, right? And in the same way, we know that when it comes to medication, increased stress actually has a negative impact on the efficacy of medications for Parkinson's. So because of that, we want to use mindfulness. We want to incorporate it in it because it increases the effectiveness. We also know that when we're talking about medications, there's always that medication-related anxiety about taking the medications, about the side effects, about all of those things. So you can incorporate it as like, before I take my medication, I'm going to engage in like 2-minute mindfulness. And it can also be incorporated in sort of like the body scan can really be incorporated in checking in. How is my body reacting to this medication? All right, and these are important information that you can give to your healthcare professionals. These are important information that you can have for yourself to see how effective your medications are, how effective the treatment plans that you're using are.
Thank you, Sarah, for addressing that. And another question I have is with regards to mindfulness and the social support around it. How important is the role of family and social support when it comes to practicing mindfulness? For example, if a person's really looking forward to practicing mindfulness, what can their loved one do to help?
So I really think mindfulness actually thrives in supportive environments. So I really encourage my clients to try to bring their friends and family members into a mindfulness practice. Let's do it together, because it really helps foster that connection, right? And then everybody is kind of, after the practice, everybody is more mindful, everybody's slower, everybody's more present and engaging with each other. So I really recommend sort of doing that. But also, similar to going to the gym, mindfulness is most effective if you're practicing it regularly. But when it comes to chronic conditions, you've got fatigue, right? You've got changes in the mood, you've got cognitive challenges. All of these are going to impact motivation, even remembering to engage in mindfulness. So a way loved ones can be helpful is if they can encourage and remind, of course, in a gentle way, right, in a non-judgmental way. And the way they can do that is by purposefully creating mindful spaces, right? So, if you know your loved one is going to practice mindfulness when they're drinking their coffee, maybe making sure you don't distract them for that 1 minute, right? Maybe making sure you can create a distraction-free space for them to engage in mindfulness. Maybe even practicing mindfulness interactions. So, okay, we're going to spend time together and we're going to definitely put our phones away. We're going to put distractors away. Maybe we're going to spend time in a place that's more nature-based because those environments are more likely to allow us to be more mindful, right? And just, really encouraging mindfulness interactions, really encouraging mindful listening, mindful conversations, even setting up time that, okay, let's together try this mindfulness app and see what it feels like.
Thank you, Sarah. And my last question, with regards to resources and ongoing support, are there any resources or books that you would recommend for people who are looking to explore mindfulness further, either for themselves or when they're supporting their loved ones?
Yes. So this is the other one I want to share my my screen on. Okay. There we go. So there is a few sites that I think can be really helpful if you want to get started with mindfulness. So Mindful Neurology is a great website. They actually have free mindfulness practice groups that you can join. This is the Mindful Neurology is actually the organization that was behind the YouTube video that we watched together. So you can join in. They're virtual. The website also has a lot of helpful information on mindfulness and the mind body connection. If you'd like, I also on my website have a Back to the Present Moment program. It's a mindfulness program. It's got free guided meditations that you can engage in, listen to them. You can even follow the script, and I try to tell you a little bit about each one of the practices. Parkinson's Foundation actually has a mindfulness meditation playlist, and I think it's really awesome. It goes through different, like they have so many on there, so you can try different variety of mindfulness practices. If the self-compassionate piece resonates with you, Self-Compassion by Dr. Kristen Neff. Her website is great with free practices, free exercises that really help you develop both that mindfulness piece and the self-compassion piece. Parkinson's UK also has a mindfulness toolkit that you can look up and engage in. If you're looking for more of a structured program, mindfulness-based stress reduction British Columbia has those structured, I think, 6 to 8 week programs and retreats that are really focused on mindfulness, and you can sign up for them. Now, in terms of the apps, you don't really need to use paid apps. Headspace, Calm are available. I do like them. I loved Headspace when I first got into mindfulness. Insight Timer is free. You can use the apps. It's nice to have them on your phone so they're easily accessible. But honestly, right now, there's a lot of free guided mindfulnesses available on YouTube, which is also on your phone. So, you can choose if you like. And then 2 books that I would highly recommend. One is the Relaxation and Stress Reduction Workbook. This one actually guides you through the mindfulness practices, and then it has questions that you can reflect more on the practice that you've done and gain better insight. The same with a mindfulness-based stress reduction workbook literally has a lot of practices, a lot more education about what mindfulness is, what it looks like, what are the benefits, as well as a lot more of that self-reflection. If you like doing workbooks and things like that. Yeah, I'll put my contact information on here as well. So if anybody wants to sort of write it down, if there is something that I didn't cover, a specific resource that you're thinking about or wanting, please feel free to send me an email. My email address is sarah@ahmadiancounselling.com. You're also welcome to reach out to me through my website. There's a little contact form as well on there at ahmadiancounselling.com.